implore the men in the world who have women that they say they care about, daughters that they are raising, that this is their issue too. I mean, for men to sit on their hands over this issue and trade out women's health for a tax break or whatever it is a sad statement about that man's level of value of the women in their life.
Her talking about how expensive it was to live in the White House. Go for it.
It's expensive to live in the White House.
Yeah.
As many people don't know. Sure. I mean, much is not covered. You're paying for every bit of food that you eat. You're not paying for housing and the staff in it, but everything, even travel. If you're not traveling with the president, if your kids are coming on a Bright Star, which is the First Lady's plane, we had to pay for their travel to be on the plane.
Michelle Obama walked in with her usual aura of untouchable fame. But on live TV, Charlie Kirk and Patrick Bet-David brought the thunder. With sharp wit and cold facts, they tore through the polished image and exposed the contradictions hiding behind the smiles and speeches. It was not a debate. It was a full-blown reality check. The moment was loud, unapologetic, and impossible to ignore. By the time they were done, even her fan base had to blink twice.
Oh yes, no, she's at her complaining quotient, but I guess she's talking about abortion there as if like women's health. But let me just be clear: not a single Trump voting male in the world is ever going to be won over by complaining Michelle Obama. Just to make
she looks.
Why would you ever post this picture? Yes. No. The people were, and I'm actually not being funny. They were asking Barack, why would you ever post this picture? What part of Michelle's picture? Barack looks great. That is not a.
Can you close up on her, Rob?
Actually, don't. But can you zoom out a little bit? Not for bad reasons. It's just she doesn't look good in that picture. Yeah. Sometimes you don't look good. So guess what you do when sometimes you don't look good? You ask and you say, hey, babe, you okay if I post this picture? No, use this one.
Charlie Kirk ticked it off with the precision of a man who's been waiting for this roast since the first time he heard the phrase becoming. You could tell he didn't even break a sweat. He went straight for the ideological jugular, the kind of commentary that doesn't even need to raise its voice. He simply laid out the record and let it implode under its bloated self-importance.
Push through it. And one side note on Michelle Obama, can we just note how overrated she is? And like all the hype around Michelle Obama, she's going to run for office. And she's just, I don't want to get into the aesthetics of all of it, but the presentation of her podcast is terrible.
I've never been in the
Michelle
Michelle
Obama's
Obama's running for president campaign.
Let me ask you a question.
I don't get it.
Let me ask you a question. How much of becoming a president on the Democratic side, hear me out, how much of being a president on the Democratic side do you think is you getting picked or you saying, I'm going to be a president? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, how much of it do you think is the first one?
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Michelle Obama, he said, was less of a former first lady and more of a full-time influencer with a part-time commitment to accountability. Somewhere between the Netflix deals and the book tours, she forgot that Americans remember things, real things, not just camera angles and filtered empowerment speeches.
So recently, I have mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings, that deep pit in my stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future.
It's so dark. And now she's saying, now I have hope because of Kamala Harris. The apocalyptic undertones of the Democrat Party is dramatic. This is their identity. This is their purpose.
Charlie's signature move is that he never punches up or down. He just punches where the nonsense lives. And Michelle's entire brand is a mansion built on narrative gymnastics. So, he set the stage by recounting how the woman who claimed to be apolitical managed to have her fingerprints on every single culture war grenade since 2009.
If all of a sudden the Dems did flip in August and they put a Newsom Michelle combination, do you know what mainstream media would do with that? CNN, what Jimmy Fallon, Colbert, all these podcasts, the Oprah Winfrey, the NBA, LeBron,
Forget it.
Do you know what Taylor Swift, do you know what these guys would be doing? It would be bonkers. By the way, if it is Michelle and Newsom, it's going to be a dog.
It's as if she's allergic to the idea of subtlety. She could write a children's book about vegetables and still find a way to sneak in a jab about voter suppression. Kirk made that clear. This wasn't about disagreeing with her policies. It was about exposing the calculated performance art masquerading as genuine concern. Then came the fun part. Charlie took apart her carefully curated persona like it was a mismatched IKEA bookshelf. The public image of Michelle is all about relatability. She's the former first lady who dances, wears sneakers, and shows up on cooking shows. But Charlie pointed out the painfully obvious contradiction in trying to be both Oprah and a revolutionary. He said if Michelle truly represented the oppressed, she wouldn't be sipping imported teas on a $60,000 Sense couch while telling working-class Americans that they don't dream big enough. There's a disconnection so wide, it has its own zip code. Of course, Charlie being Charlie, he didn't stop at the surface. He drilled into the psychology of the whole thing. He dissected how Michelle's rise to pop culture sainthood was a masterpiece of modern marketing, not a tribute to courage or intellect.
Reasons, it's just she doesn't look good in that picture.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't look good. So guess what you do when sometimes you don't look good? You ask and you say, hey, babe, you okay if I post this picture? No, use this one. Use that one. Use this one. So I don't even know why he posted the picture. You know, he has his own reasons for posting a picture. So a lot of people said, why are you even doing this? It's not cool for you to post a picture like this. So
the reason? She just didn't look good in that picture. Sometimes you don't look good. So guess what you do when that happens? You ask, you say, hey babe, you okay if I post this picture? No, use this one. Use that one. Use this one. So no one really knows why he posted the picture. He had his own reasons, apparently. But a lot of people asked, why are you even doing this? It's not cool to post a picture like that. Then Charlie said the media treated Michelle the same way teenagers treat their favorite boy band. Wild, irrational, and with no sense of objectivity. You couldn't question her. You couldn't critique her. And heaven forbid you fact-check her. If you did, you were automatically branded sexist, racist, or some other form of ideological sinner. Charlie didn't just roast Michelle. He practically served her brand on a spit with a side of elite hypocrisy. Her memoir wasn't a glimpse into her soul. It was a focus-tested, consultant-approved product meant to stir emotion without inviting scrutiny. Kirk said she wasn't relatable, she was rehearsed. There's a big difference between a role model and a role player, and Michelle, he argued, fell firmly in the latter. According to him, every tearful interview, every soundbite about struggle, every passive-aggressive swipe at America's character, it was all carefully engineered. And just when you thought he was done, he dropped the hammer. He brought up her infamous assertion that she wasn't proud of her country until a certain political moment. Kirk unpacked that statement like a bomb technician.
All the time, and she's complaining. Right, again, I'm not trying to look in people's looks. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying the whole aura of it, to use a Gen Z term, is terrible. It's negative. It's just kind of her lamenting. And then she's obviously, there's problems with her daughters and all that. I don't want to get into that. But we built up on the right. Michelle Obama is going to be the hardest person ever to run against. And her book sold so many copies. And
because what kind of person rises to the highest echelons of power, reaps the benefits of every freedom the nation offers, and still finds it morally satisfying to shame the very system that made it possible. He pointed out that Michelle's America is a hologram, an imagined dystopia that somehow never affects her private jet schedule. When Patrick Bet-David took the stage, the vibe shifted entirely. Patrick is not so much a political sniper as he is a cultural demolition crew. And he wasted no time tearing through the glitzy packaging of Michelle's image like a contractor spotting a termite infestation in a Beverly Hills mansion. Where Charlie Kirk was surgical, Patrick was cinematic. You could practically hear the popcorn popping in the background as he set the mood with a smirk and a shrug, as if to say, "You all already know, but let's just say it out loud anyway." Patrick's signature move is the strategic pause. He sets the trap with a casual tone, lulls you into thinking he's just making an observation, then boom, hits with a punchline so devastating it echoes in the political rafters. He started by asking why the media continues to treat Michelle like she's untouchable. Then he proceeded to touch every single sacred cow grazing in her rhetorical field. He pointed out that Michelle doesn't talk like someone who wants to inspire Americans. She talks like someone who wants to guilt trip them into submission.
Of course. I mean, look, first of all, just like the embedded kind of just implied chauvinism that all of our relationships in the Trump world are like we tell our wives exactly what to do. It's like, okay, no, we all have agency, okay? Secondly, I just have to comment on this. She's really lost a step. Just embedded in her language is like, she's really let
He
me
mocked
mock
the idea that Michelle Obama is somehow the moral conscience of the nation. According to Patrick, if your version of morality involves wagging your finger at millions of citizens while cashing checks from the corporations you claim to oppose, maybe you're not the lighthouse of virtue you think you are. He questioned how someone could spend a decade in the White House, surrounded by power and influence, and still walk away claiming victimhood. He even imitated her dramatic pauses, the furrowed brows, the performative concern. It was the kind of roast that doesn't even need jokes. The absurdity sells itself. He said listening to Michelle talk about the struggle was like watching a billionaire complain about ATM fees. It doesn't land. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't even make sense. But the media claps anyway, because challenging Michelle is like challenging gravity. It's not allowed in polite society.
That's more energy and more intensity. It's like this Michelle Obama just looks broken. And she's kind of doing the wine mom thing, and she's just kind of like, I'm just kind of meandering through life. Anyway, I'm not upset about
populated
it.
Populated like every 30 seconds with, what about me? No one asks about me.
Totally, exactly. Or and Megan, I know you'll take this in good stride, but she's like, we black women need to complain more. Yeah, that's the problem.
Patrick then zeroed in on the strange obsession the establishment has with turning Michelle into the second coming of political royalty. He said it's less about her actual achievements and more about manufacturing a narrative that fits a pre-written script. In other words, Michelle Obama isn't admired. She's projected. People don't see her. They see what they want her to represent. And that makes her the perfect mascot for a movement that thrives on illusion, like a TED Talk on empathy written by a PR firm. There's no real intellectual rigor, just buzzwords meant to evoke applause. And the sad part? Millions lap it up like it's gospel. But Patrick challenged the audience to go deeper. He said, if you look beyond the applause lines, you'll find a woman who never truly risked anything. Not her status, not her income, not her comfort. All she ever gambled was other people's trust.
Michelle Obama says, until recently, I've mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings. Is that a pit in my stomach? A palpable sense of dread about the future? Now, look, Michelle Obama has well-documented anxiety problems. And it's very interesting. When they are not in control of political power, they get anxiety. And being at the DNC, this for them is church. For them, this was a religion.
Michelle Obama says, until recently, I've mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings, that pit in your stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future. Now look, Michelle Obama has well-documented anxiety problems. And it's very interesting. When they're not in control of political power, they get anxious. Being at the DNC for them is church. For them, this is a religion. He even joked that Michelle's activism had all the danger of a scented candle. She tells you to rise up, but only if it doesn't interfere with your brunch plans. Her revolution fits neatly inside a gift bag, complete with a signed book and a podcast subscription. It's activism for people who don't want to get their hands dirty. It's change brought to you by corporate sponsors and emotional manipulation. He argued that Michelle doesn't wield power the traditional way. She's mastered the emotional high ground. She doesn't debate, she declares. She doesn't argue, she emotes. And if you disagree, you're not wrong. You're heartless. It's a brilliant trick, he admitted, but it's still a trick. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's not leadership. It's theater. A Broadway play dressed up as a political doctrine.
You really have to wonder. In fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. you do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken.
You really have to wonder. In fact, if we had said 3 weeks ago, Blake, imagine this, if we had said that Joy Reid, Michelle Obama, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called racist. But now they're coming out and saying it for us. They're literally saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot just to be noticed. Then came the rhetorical Molotov cocktail. Patrick pointed out the greatest irony of all, that Michelle Obama, the self-proclaimed outsider, has never once lived like one. She is the establishment. She is the system. She is what every so-called activist claims to fight. Because when the most powerful, celebrated, and wealthy woman in America still insists she's a victim, you have to ask, what exactly counts as winning? And that's the point both Kirk and Patrick hammered home, each in their own style. Michelle Obama's narrative only works if everyone agrees to suspend disbelief. It only functions if nobody asks real questions. But these two weren't interested in the fantasy. They pulled back the velvet curtain, exposed the gears and levers, and revealed a carefully managed illusion, one that relies more on emotion than fact, more on performance than principle.
So, what are you thinking when you're giving this message? Like, what are you thinking in your mind? Because let's do data. Rob, can you type in Obama's net worth in 2007? What was Obama in 2007? 1.2 million, 1.3 million. Okay. So their net worth is, let's write this down. This is pre-White House. Their collective net worth was 1.3 million. Can you go to where their net worth was in 2016 when they're done being presidents? Okay. 2016. So their net worth, as expensive as it was, they went from being 1.3 million to 12.2 million.
Charlie Kirk went for the ideological inconsistencies. Patrick Bet-David skewered the cultural mythology. And together, they carved up the persona of Michelle Obama, not out of malice, but because someone had to say the obvious out loud. Not everyone who smiles at a camera and uses inspiring buzzwords is a hero. Sometimes they're just really good at branding. And when the applause fades and the cameras shut off, what's left is the uncomfortable truth. Maybe, just maybe, we've all been sold a story far more polished than it is real. And that truth is still unraveling. Because this wasn't just a roast. It was a beginning, a starting point. The red carpet is still rolled out, the spotlights are still on, and Michelle Obama is still center stage. But now, the audience is a little more skeptical, a little less hypnotized. Because once the illusion cracks, it's only a matter of time before the whole script starts to fall apart. And just when you thought the curtain had dropped, Patrick leaned back and threw in one more grenade. He questioned why Michelle, if so committed to helping the downtrodden, always seems to pop up in the wealthiest zip codes, behind velvet ropes, delivering prepackaged wisdom to rooms full of elites nodding like bobbleheads. He joked that her version of outreach looked suspiciously like brand expansion. Meanwhile, Charlie circled back, reminding everyone that the most powerful form of deception isn't a lie. It's a half-truth wrapped in applause. Not just the myth of Michelle, but the entire machinery that props her up.